more all the time. And I think we can both go a lot deeper than we might have been able to even a year ago. So this should be pretty fun.
Well, I think there's an amazing thing going on in our, I don't know what you want to call it, the conspiracy community or whatever. And that is we're all kind of coming to the same conclusions at the same time. And so the conclusion that we had a year ago is not the conclusion that we have now. And so, and we're refining everything that we're looking at and seeing. And so, I said right after Sandy Hook, I got on, I think it was Jeff Rentz's program. And I said, we had to be careful that people died at Sandy Hook. Well, it's 2 years later, and guess what? I don't think anybody died at Sandy Hook. So I caution people to be careful, but, I was wrong. I really now beginning to wonder if everything about Sandy Hook is just a fraud.
Well, that's interesting because that was something I wanted to get to with you because I know that you've been following it and looked at it very closely, and we're far away from the event. So I think a lot of the knee-jerk emotional responses have kind of subsided. But having looked at this so much, I mean, like you just said, you don't think that anyone died? That seems to be the kind of the more fringe conclusion.
Yeah, and I don't go towards that conclusion with any kind of glee, even though I'm happy that no one died. It's just that I have other information which one day I'm going to drop about the whole Sandy Hook affair, which is, I will drop soon the entire thing of it being Obama's 9/11. And I will show why and how, but not yet. I don't have my cards right in a row yet, but I'm getting there. So eventually I will come out with something, a bombshell about Sandy Hook, but I'm waiting because I'm hoping that Jim Fetzer and Wolfgang Halbig and some of these other people can jam this thing loose so we can find out what's really going on.
Yeah, it is a really creepy event. And to think that no one died, yes, on one hand, you got to be happy that no kids were killed. But on the other hand, there are some scary implications for the amount of power these people have and their ability to shape reality. That's just as scary.
Even scarier. And I don't think we can allow them to get away with it. I just don't. I think this is what Sandy Hook was. I thought I'd taken the red pill back in 1989 when I first got into this stuff 25 years ago. And I was wrong. I didn't really take the red pill until January 2013, when I started going down the path of trying to figure out what happened at that school. And, the first thing that I discovered in my journey after taking the gigantic, huge basketball-sized red pill, was that the news media had been basically instructed to not cover Sandy Hook in any way, shape, or form, to ignore any real inquiry into it. And this comes from a post that's on the Columbia School of Journalism, a well-known school that turns out Marxist journalists. And it was saying that we should any inquiries into Sandy Hook should be ignored. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I'm a journalist, and that's not how I was educated to be a journalist. We were supposed to ask questions and question power, not accept what power gave us. So I knew it in January 2013 that the entire system had been co-opted. And what happened after that, I think, is actually probably the most important turn of events in the entire conspiracy community, because for months after Sandy Hook, from January until April, we were all arguing with each other about the events, and the people on the very far end, they just kept getting righter and righter. And it was really disconcerting because we were all after the facts of what happened and trying to collate all these things. Then you just start reaching the damning conclusion that is everybody in on it? and then came the Boston bombing in April 2013.
Right.
And I gotta tell you, the Boston bombing is, having looked at every available photograph over and over, examining them all over and over. I don't know. It's an even bigger fraud than Sandy Hook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then what happened is that a lot of people after April 2013, they went, okay, we just had two huge events. And for all intents and purposes, they look like they're theatrically staged events.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching the Boston bombing. I don't usually watch TV, but for some reason on that day, I decided to watch TV. I turned it on. Within 10 minutes, the bombing had happened. And the first thing, I'm a former physical special effects guy in the movie industry. Mm-hmm. And saw that second explosion going up, and I went, that's not an explosion, that's a movie effect. Because it has a very white smoke and a very intense orange color about it. It's meant for visual. It's a way to make an explosion that's harmless but looks really visual. And it's a trick that we use in movies. And I got kind of worried at that point. But what happened in the conspiracy community at that point is a whole bunch of us went, okay, we just had two events that appear to be frauds, and both of them politically motivated. One for gun control and one to see if they could lock down a city without any protests. Mm-hmm. So I and many, many, many other people began going backwards. We began back engineering reality. We began looking at many, many events in the past. And going way back in the past, 20, 30 years in the past. And I can tell you that what we are discovering is that many of the events that we think are real in the last 40 years, especially after World War II, are fake. I mean, completely fake. At this point, I'm not sure the Zodiac murders were true. I'm not sure the Manson murders really happened. I'm not sure of a lot of things, actually. And the more I look, what I've decided to do as I back engineer reality is I'm looking at events, going back in time and looking at events. And what I've decided to do was look at events where everybody's handsome. Okay?
Yeah.
Everybody's good looking in the event. So, because the Tasnerev brothers were very handsome, and all the girls went crazy over the younger one, remember? Mm-hmm. He was on the cover of Rolling Stone and all that, yeah. The bombing kid. So started going back and looking at either events that involved well-cast, handsome people. And I think that's the key. And so I'm telling the whoever is putting on these events, could you start using, ugly, homeless-looking people?
Yeah, so, where are all the fat people? I thought America was full of obese people.
Everybody that you cast in your events is always really handsome and good looking. All the kids are just darling, and it's just like it's time to get real. Life does not look like a Hollywood movie, guys.
True. And those two brothers that were apparently guilty, I mean, this is of all the events that we've seen in recent years, this one was the weirdest to me because the TV coverage was so sloppy. It didn't seem to have nearly the polish of their typical narratives. It was kind of like, okay, we got these guys, they're guilty, there was a little bit of a shootout, and let's just go. Let's just move on to the next story. Where usually they glorify those people a little bit more, but it seemed like maybe there were too many holes in the story that if they covered it too much, it would come through.
Well, I think you're onto something there. I think, when I went on Rents in January 2013, cautioning everybody to be careful about Sandy Hook, I was then attacked by Salon.com, who wrote a really nasty piece about me. Alex Seitzwald is the gentleman who wrote the article. And it really upset me a lot. In fact, it's one of the impetuses for my journey of taking the giant red pill. And I began wondering why I was being attacked and surreptitiously linked to every whacked out conspiracy theory concerning Sandy Hook. It was the way the article was written. It appeared that I was progeniting all of these wacky conspiracy theories, including one that said the Jews did it. Mm-hmm. Which is ridiculous. So I realized that this was the first time that I had been attacked, and I wanted to find out why, and that sent me down the trail. Well, at that time, January, February, Sandy Hook was getting a lot of coverage. Alex Seitzwald was a guest on Anderson Cooper a number of times, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then came the first round of counterattacks by us, by the good guys. And these were pretty good counter arguments to the official story, and asking a lot of really good questions. And for the first time, the entire world was galvanized to find out what really happened at Sandy Hook, what really happened here. And thousands of people became unpaid investigators. It was truly, and still is truly, one of the most amazing things I've ever witnessed.
Man, and being a filmmaker and a film fan yourself, just look at Wag the Dog. They show you right there how to stage a false flag attack, and it's kind of crazy that that movie comes off as a comedy, and none of these guys seem all that nefarious, but that movie has it's a way more enlightening film just in the past 5 years. When you look at the events, you're like, wow, that's the template right there.
Oh, and I would point out that Dustin Hoffman played a film producer named Stanley, who faked the event, and then he dies.
Yeah, it all seems to connect. The elite are so calculating, and they seem to be following a script. They've definitely got these plans that have been going on forever. And one scary blip on the conspiracy radar recently was this update to the Georgia Guidestones. Have you seen that?
Well, I have, and I want to talk about that because that goes right in with everything else that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, first off, we don't know when, but at some point, someone got up on a ladder and cut a little niche into the English-speaking stone of the Georgia Guidestones. Now, I filmed at the Georgia Guidestones in 2005 and 2006, and I went back for the History Channel in 2008, and the niche wasn't there. I've got my photographs. So sometime after 2010, this niche, and you can't cut a niche into limestone without making a lot of noise. So this niche gets cut into the limestone of the English-speaking side, and interestingly enough, there's a camera there, so we should be able to go back and see who cut the niche. Anyway, I didn't know the niche was cut, but suddenly in August, late August this year, somebody, again with a ladder, went up there and stuck a stone that had been carved perfectly to fit the niche. And on the stone, it said 2014. Mm-hmm. Now, again, we should know who did this act of vandalism, right? Because there's a camera there.
You would think.
So, yeah, well, of course, you have to. And I'm sure the authorities and the police are, searching to find out who this person that did this is. I'm sure they're going through every single photograph and video that they've got. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so the stone is up there, and it causes a huge sensation. I mean, everybody's freaking out because it does feel like they're about to do the culling or kill off 6.5 million people and leave a world of 500 million.
Right.
And the world does feel like that right now. It feels like something is about to happen, something big. And I think everybody feels it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so last Saturday, they decided to take the stone down. Somebody did. There's a YouTube, and thank goodness the woman was there getting it on her cell phone camera. We may have never seen this. So there's a state trooper there, so that's proof that they're definitely concerned and they're investigating. And there's a gentleman in a red shirt who says that he's been hired to, keep the Guidestones intact, and you got to wonder who's paying him, if he is getting paid at all. Anyway, he has a big, huge ladder, and he crawls up and he pulls the stone off the niche, and he brings it down. And the woman, fortunately, cell phone camera in hand, gets all the stone. We find out that there's not just 2 messages on the 6-sided stone. There's 6 messages, 1 on each side. Get the stone right in front of the state trooper now. I know that state trooper is going to confiscate that stone as evidence for the vandalism that he's investigating. So I'm waiting to grab that stone and carefully put it in a towel and take it back so we can see where it was carved, because you can start tracing and do forensics on it, right?
True.
Now that's not what happened. What happened was the guy with the red shirt who is very, very good mason, I might add, takes his masonry chisel and within about, what, 10 seconds or 15 seconds, breaks up the entire stone. But fortunately, we got the cell phone camera footage, and it's been uploaded. Mm-hmm. So we have 6 sides. We got 20 and we got 14. Then we've got the word jam. Then we've got MM. And then we've got a 16 and an 8. All right? That's what we have on this stone that was carefully carved and inserted into the niche, which appeared somehow. Mm-hmm. Okay, what does this mean?
Right.
Well, what it means is this. A MM means master mason. That's the signature of the guy who made the little stone. Okay?
Okay.
Jam is a Masonic term for placing a stone into a niche. Okay? It's what he did. He jammed it.
All right.
He put the stone in the niche, and he signed it with MM. So those two are the act and his signature. So they're really not all that important. But the numbers are really important. So the numbers are 8, 14, 16, and 20. So what does it mean? Well, 814 is the month and the year that the niche stone was put in place. That explains that. Mm-hmm. And the 2016 is now that are the most mysterious. So what is this saying? Well, that the niche stone has been placed right next to the 500 million number in English is a very significant thing. And so what does it mean? Well, in my opinion, the Master Mason has told us the time period of the culling. How long this period is going to be until they hit their goal of 500 million. I can think of no other reason for doing this entire thing. And I know, and I think you probably do know also, that this group believes that if they tell people ahead of time what they're doing, they are somehow now karmically free of the damage that's about to be done. In other words, it's up to us to see what they're saying to us and to take matters into our own hands.
Right, yeah.
They're giving us that one out. And they do it all the time. Every single event they do, they foretell us, whether it's the Lone Gunman show that was broadcast in April 2001, telling us about what was going to happen in September 2001, or any number of things. So Sandy Hook in the Batman film on the map. So we know they do this. And so they have done it. And they've done the ultimate. And they've told us. And I think your listeners should consider what I'm telling them very soberly, because somebody went to a great degree of expense and trouble to put that stone there. And that stone is now gone. And I believe that the person who built the Georgia Guidestones is the person who built that little odd niche stone.
Right.
And he is the Master Mason. And he is giving us for those who are aware and for those who pay attention, he's giving us a very, very, very important piece of data.
Man, that's fascinating. I really didn't know that about the other sides of the stone. And I wonder if we were even supposed to know, or I wonder if...
I don't think we were. I think this woman who got the cell phone footage, she just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And they took that stone apart so fast, I mean, it wasn't even funny.
Well, that's what, when you were telling me that story, there were a couple of things that raised my eyebrows. I'm like, I wonder if this is stage 2. I wonder if if the whole breaking down of the stone was just some type of, actors playing out for the YouTube video that they were going to upload later and to put it out that way. It's tough to say, but I mean, things get so hairy in this area that you just don't know what's to believe anymore.
Well, I would believe you on that, except that does not explain why. Listen, they cut that niche into the stone, into the slab at some point. That's huge.
Yeah.
can't begin to say how huge that is. It had to be pre-planned, and again, just because we have the Lone Gunman series featuring the airplanes being directed by the Pentagon into the Twin Towers, and just because there are actors involved in these events doesn't mean that there isn't still a message. And what I believe is that, I'm just going to tell you what I believe.
Sure.
2008, I think it was 2008, I may be wrong on that. There was a meeting in New York called, and it was Oprah, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Ted Turner, and a bunch of luminaries got called into this secret meeting. And according to the rumors on the internet, they were told that the depopulation plan was, Oprah was there too, that the depopulation plan was about to begin. Supposed to the rumors, Oprah got very upset at this news, and they kind of were, kind of patting her on the shoulder. Oh, you're so sensitive, Oprah, and Ted Turner was there.
Mm.
He's one of the richest guys in Georgia, and he's also a Mason. And when I was doing my film 2012, The Odyssey, which came out in 2006, which was the first major media piece on the Georgia Guidestones, I interviewed the editor of the local newspaper, Elberton, Georgia newspaper. And he told me that the Guidestones were built by Masons. Now, that was the first time that anyone had ever connected the Masons to the Guidestones. So, I believe that Ted Turner is R.C. Christian and that he built the Georgia Guidestones. Now, for many, many reasons do I believe it. First off, he's from Georgia. The Georgia Guidestones are in the highest place in Georgia. But he's also been a depopulation guy for years, encouraging depopulation and saying there's too many people, and a super environmentalist and all that. And I believe that he got word that the event was starting, and he made the stone and put it up there.
Yeah, that is a super compelling narrative. It makes a lot of sense. It's very scary that would show up on the English-speaking side. I wonder if similar stones will show up on the slabs of the other cultures.
Well, there's no niches in those stones.
Yeah, that's something to watch for.
Yeah, if a niche appears,
look out.
Your life. Why can't another stone go up on that niche?
Yeah. Man, that's a fascinating narrative that I haven't heard anywhere else yet, and I think it makes so much sense. Definitely not what I planned to start this thing with, and I guess, that's definitely a little heavy, but I was going to ask you, when I was getting prepped for the show, in that classic synchronistic fashion, I learned that you recently also released a feature film that revolves around Mount Shasta. And I just so happen to be taking a trip through the Pacific Northwest next month, and Mount Shasta is very high on my list of places I want to see because there's so much mystery and paranormal lore surrounding that area. It's crazy. And I hoped we kind of could talk about that a little bit. Can you tell me about the movie or the process of being there and in that area and making it?
Yeah, the movie's called The Last Avatar, and it's coming out right now. And we're putting it in theaters. It'll be out on iTunes and Amazon and everything soon enough. And it's about the return of Kalki Avatar, who is the 10th and last Avatar incarnation of Vishnu, who comes back. He prophesies to come back and destroy basically the Illuminati. So, and I was living just north of Shasta while I was coming up with the idea for my movie, and I got very interested in the lore of Mount Shasta. Started buying a lot of books, go down to Mount Shasta, which is really an amazingly beautiful and powerful place, I might add, and started to go down there and buying the books in the bookstores and reading about the Lemurians who are believed to have escaped disaster and live inside Mount Shasta, and there's supposedly a city called Telos, and supposedly from the time that white people have been settling in the area, and even before, because the Native Americans warned the white people there were these beings that lived inside Mount Shasta, and then there's these reports, consistent reports from the people who lived there, of these kind of tall, very handsome people that are seen in town wearing odd clothing, and frequently paying for things with gold, buying like something that's worth $5 and paying it with some gold that's worth $300. And so these rumors are consistent. There's a miner who said he accidentally fell into a pit on Mount Shasta and walked into a giant cavern that was filled with tons of minerals, and he actually mounted an expedition to go back, and then he mysteriously disappeared. There is so much for this area that has almost no people in it, that it's just like, if there's this much smoke, there has to be fire. And I started looking into it, and I decided that I would, for the sake of a fiction film, I would present a lot of this lore in the movie, which I do.
Man, yeah, it seems like a perfect backdrop for that kind of film. It's such an interesting place, and it's so, in a time when Hollywood has run out of ideas and is recycling everything under the sun, there is a hotbed of interest that hasn't really been touched.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm really grateful is we've been showing the film to focus groups to see, how to advertise for it and what people like and what they don't like. And they're coming back, 95% extremely positive. So I'm really happy, and I don't pull any punches in the movie. I mean, I go for the jugular. I explain what's going on, who's running the place, what we have to do. I go into the Archons. I go into everything. So, and it's a feature film. Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God, plays Count Saint Germain, who's also been sighted on Mount Shasta several hundred times.
Right. That was another thing I was going to ask you about, the Saint Germain character. Can you tell us a little bit about the legends and the stories behind him showing up there?
Well, it's just really interesting. Of course, Count Saint Germain really, really, truly lived. It was rumored that he had been seen, in different places in Europe for 300 years ongoing. And he never ate, he never drank wine, and all he did was sit at the tables with the monarchs and the kings, because he was a very aristocratic man. He was a count, and he would discuss things, and he would imply that he was very, very old. And then he would have a white powder, which he would be seen occasionally taking. So a lot of people thought he might be an immortal, or at least a person who had lived a long time, and he certainly wanted people to think that. Well, what's interesting is that the rumors then said that Count Saint Germain had left Europe around the time of the American Revolution and gone to America, because he said this is the place that was being prepared by the Brotherhood of Light for the Enlightenment, and he wanted to be there for it. Well, interestingly enough, when you start reading the lore about Mount Shasta, you find that the White Brotherhood is the name of the people who live inside Mount Shasta, and they're these tall, very pale-skinned people that may or may not be remnants of a civilization that existed in America a long, long time ago, and so starting in, like, I believe it was the 40s, the 40s, the rumors started that people were meeting this guy up in Mount Shasta who said he lived down underneath the mountain, and that he would come out, usually at night, and he said he was Count Saint Germain, and that he was prepping the world for a grand awakening. And so my movie, Last Avatar, is kind of the fictional version of what he was saying.
That's awesome. The stories that are so interesting to me, the most compelling is that idea that there are people coming out and going to local shops with those old coins, old gold coins. Yeah. That just sounds so intense and interesting.
Well, that's from an LA Times article in 1938. I mean, a travel article in their travel section.
Man, the fact that the New York Times would write about that is really off the wall too.
Well, they won't do it anymore. But yeah, so UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, uh, odd angel sightings. I mean, it was amazing, the kind of stuff. So what I did was, while I was filming, and I actually show this in the movie, I discovered that all underneath the entire plateau, underneath Mount Shasta, is these gigantic lava tubes. And I actually got into these lava tubes. And these lava tubes are huge. They're, 20 to 70 feet in diameter. And they're round. And they're hollow. And they run for miles. And I realized that anything could be in these. Anything. And I started, and I didn't get down there much because I was filming. It's pitch black in these things. There's, anything could be down there. And how many layers of these lava tubes are there? I mean, we don't know. There might be, 20, 30 stories of lava tubes crisscrossing all the way down, going down 100 miles even. So we don't know what's down there. We know that there's these lava tubes and that anything could be living in these lava tubes, but we don't know any more than that.
Damn. Yeah, I mean, I've heard about those cryptid sightings and stuff too, but the fact that you've seen them firsthand and described how big they are, that's definitely large enough for a ship to fit through if there are UFOs coming in and out of that area.
Absolutely. And again, the mountain is so huge that if you flattened it out, it'd be like the size of some states. And it's very difficult to navigate. And so there's only, the set paths that people take when they're hiking up to the top of the mountain. And then nobody ever really kind of goes anywhere else on the mountain. And on the other side of the mountain, the eastern side, man, there's nothing. There's no farms. There's no ranches. There is nothing for hundreds and hundreds of miles.
Yeah, and another weird aspect is I've heard that there are people who've seen a large military presence there, which when you describe how empty the area is, it seems odd enough. And obviously a military presence is always going to make me a little suspicious.
Well, there is no military bases anywhere around, but on that east side, where there is nothing, no ranches, no farms, nobody living, no roads except one road. And guess what the name of that road is? Military Road.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm suspecting there's an underground base right there too.
Man, I'm so happy to talk to someone who's actually been there because I hear people mentioning vortexes and changes of energy. Did you experience anything like that when you were there?
It was so powerful there that I actually decided to chuck about half the scenes that I originally planned to film at Shasta, and I filmed them in Oregon, just because the vibe was so high that I just could not concentrate.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was just like super vibe.
See, that's awesome because obviously in the conspiracy world, a lot of it has to do with energies and things that you can't see. And I haven't had a lot of validation for myself in terms of energy. And it would be awesome to go to a place like that and experience something intense like that to just get that validation.
Yeah, a lot of people go there and never leave. I know a lot of people that have done that. I mean, never leave. Once they're there, they just never go anywhere. They're done.
Wow. Is there a certain area there where if someone was going there seeking weirdness, is there a particular place or anything you would recommend they go to?
There's I forget the name of the kind of the New Age mystical bookstore, but that's a very cool place, and they have all the books. One thing I did early on researching for the movie was I went to the organic co-op store there, a very cool store, and I put a note on the bulletin board with my phone number saying if you have any weird stories that you'd like to tell, call this number. Mm-hmm. I got inundated. I mean, I wish I'd never done it. I had to get rid of my cell phone because it was just, I got so many phone calls and so many people telling me their stories that at a certain point I just had to pull the plug on the whole thing. But I got a lot of good stuff for my movie out of it, and that was good.
Wow. Did any of those stories stick out to you as more compelling or memorable to you?
there's odd similarity to the stories of usually a single woman hiking somewhere up on the mountain and seeing a man. It's always a woman seeing a man, and then the man walks up to her, and the man is again tall with really blue eyes and pale skin, really handsome, and he just stares at her with his blue eyes for like 20 minutes, and then he walks away. I heard this story from so many women, I just didn't know what to say after a while. And they said that as he approached them, they felt this tremendous, almost sexual energy coming from this guy, but they never felt threatened by him at all. In fact, they wished they could see him again, and they couldn't figure out exactly what was even happening, but that while he was staring at them, they were paralyzed.
Man, if there was one theme of the day, it would be wary of handsome people. That's so crazy. And this is going to get a little bit weird, but you hear these stories about Mount Shasta being somewhat mystical and energetically powerful. And it's funny that a corporation would name a soda Shasta, because I just heard this breakdown of 7-Up, where their logo is a red dot, and you have 7 chakras and then 7 chakras up, alluding to enlightenment. And in both cases, it seems like they're trying to invoke the tone of some positive spiritual practice or magical spiritual place on their logo and marketing, but they're essentially putting poison in the can.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I wouldn't touch that stuff with a 10-foot pole.
I wouldn't either, but I'm kind of addicted to soda, so it happens. But,
Yeah.
So to switch gears a little bit here, last time we talked a whole lot about Stanley Kubrick and how he very well might be the man who helped them stage the moon landing footage, and that he might have been trying to tell us about some of this in his movies, and it's super fascinating stuff. But what didn't come up was the Brotherhood of Saturn, and I've recently had a few guests who point out this vast symbolism of Saturn in our culture, which shows these secret orders must be pretty powerful. But there's also a Kubrick connection here too, isn't there?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Brotherhood of Saturn is endlessly fascinating. My good friend Troy McLaughlin, I'm going to be seeing him when I go to England next week. Looking really forward to meeting him for the first time and talking about the Brotherhood of Saturn with him. My take on the Brotherhood of Saturn is, of course, a little bit different than Troy's, because his is more of a scientific view, although I have to say his Tower of Babylon interpretation is, I believe, spot on. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I came across a book many, many years ago, and I'm going to forget the author's name, so forgive me. You probably look it up on Amazon. It's called Fire and Ice, and it's about the Brotherhood of Saturn, the real group called the Brotherhood of Saturn. And what had happened is that some of the Brotherhood of Saturn was a secret society, and some of their material had gotten accidentally released. It was found, I think, in a flea market or something, in a file that was inside a briefcase that was being sold. And the author of Fire and Ice got this material and started reading it and decided to write a book about it. And so I read this book. And I hadn't read the book for years and years and years. And it was after I started doing my research on Stanley Kubrick in the early 2000s that I reread the book and got out of my library. Don't know why. I read it. And as I was reading the Fire and Ice about the Brotherhood of Saturn, I realized that the goal of the Brotherhood of Saturn, the basic stated goal of what they wish to achieve, was exactly represented in the movie 2001: Space Odyssey. They literally wanted to go to Saturn and redeem mankind and make man into a god, and then come back and change the world, which is exactly the plot of 2001: A Space Odyssey in the book by Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick. Stanley had to change the mission to going to Jupiter. He says because making the rings of Jupiter proved to be impossible for the special effects department. I believe that actually he was told that he had to change it because it was too obvious. Also, what I realized on my reread of Fire and Ice was that the rituals of the Brotherhood of Saturn, the rituals that they used to achieve their goal, was exactly revealed in Eyes Wide Shut. And then I knew that Stanley was probably a member.
Wow.
And he had turned his back on them, you might say, by making Eyes Wide Shut. And maybe he realized that their goals were not goals that he was in parallel with. And that maybe why he built the big wall around his estate in St. Albans. That may be why a lot of things are going on. And so I have reached a conclusion that the bad guys, the people that are that did the Georgia Guidestones, the people that are maybe starting the culling right now, the people who run the world, just start looking at them and realize that, first off, just like the Brotherhood of Saturn, they had their origins in Germany. All of them, whether they're Nazis or Zionists or the Skull and Bones, which had its origins in Germany. All of these, may I suggest, are not separate secret societies. They just appear to be separate secret societies. Mm-hmm. That they're all part of an umbrella society called the Brotherhood of Saturn, and they create these satellite secret societies as what would you call it, flypaper to gather up people. In other words, your predilection, you might be Catholic, and so you want to join Opus Dei. I might be Jewish, and I want to join the Mossad or the Zionists. A German guy might be wanting to join it, but he'd want to join Skull and Bones. In other words, there's many, many doors into the mall, but the mall is the Saturn death cult. And and so I believe that everything going on today, especially in like the showbiz world, the music industry, movies, they're openly and blatantly declaring that they are the Brotherhood of Saturn. There is no doubt. Everything from Katy Perry's Dark Horse video to Madonna at the Super Bowl to many movies that are out, they're all about the Brotherhood of Saturn. Sexualizing children, this is one of their goals. Mm-hmm. Saturn's goals is sexualizing children. Getting women to basically be whores is one of their goals, one of their primary goals. Mm-hmm. And the destruction of the family, the destruction of Christianity is their number one goal. They really, really hate Christianity, which makes me rethink Christianity.
Right. I was just going to say, I've always kind of thought that Christianity itself, or at least in its more modern form, is mind control in itself. The Vatican, of course, is guilty of 1,000 crimes under the sun, but it is strange that they would be attacking something that I would think would be one of their satellite groups.
Yeah, what I think is going on, and I'm glad you kind of brought that up, well, because we know the Vatican is just covered with Saturnalia symbols. Mm-hmm. And Saturnalia, of course, was the big celebration of Rome, before it, quote, converted. And so Rome itself was kind of obsessed with Saturn and all of that. And then we have J.R.R. Tolkien going down into the basement at Oxford and reading all the medieval literature that only he could read because only he had the linguistic ability. And then he writes, in the early 30s, he starts writing Lord of the Rings, which is a book about how Sauron, who has an all-seeing eye, is trying to take over the world by gathering up all the gold rings. And And again, he's the Lord of the Rings, just like Saturn is the Lord of the Rings. And I think he knew that this about the Saturn death cult, and he was secretly telling us about it, and that's why he named it that, knowing that eventually there would be that allusion to Saturn. And
Wow.
yeah, and again, think about it. The ring gets heavier and heavier as Frodo gets closer and closer. Saturn represents lead. That's the metal that it's associated with, right? Lead gets heavier and heavier. It's the heaviest of all the metals. There's just too many strange allusions to Saturn and things in the Lord of the Rings for him not to have known about it. And I believe he knew a lot more than he let on.
Oh yeah, I really think so too.
I'm gonna show that why Walt Disney was so hated, and prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that Stanley knew why and actually featured the reason in one of his movies.
Wow. That should be interesting because I know there are some conspiracy researchers who put a lot of blame on Walt Disney and Disney, but I think that might have just come later with the Disney Corporation, how they've bastardized it after Walt Disney died.
Oh no, the establishment has been after Walt Disney since he did his little deed, which you'll have to wait until Fever Child 3 comes out. But as soon as he pulled his little deed, he was universally hated. Anybody in the conspiracy world who is ratting on Walt Disney as a bad guy is going to have words.
I'm sorry, you cut out right there. Anyone who's ratting on Walt Disney is going to have to
Eat their words.
Right on. I can't wait for it. Should be very exciting. I always like your work. And before we go, would you like to give the people your website or anything else they should know if they want to get a little more Jay Weidner in their lives, or maybe where they can check out The Last Avatar?
Yeah, The Last Avatar movie.com. Sacredmysteries.com has all my films, including Last Avatar. JWeidner.com has all my crazy articles, which are all for free. And I'm actually programming on kind of an online Netflix right now, so you can check that out at GaiamTV.com. That's GAIAM as in mother, TV.com. I'm producing all sorts of programming for them, which I think you'll all enjoy.
Awesome, man. Well, much appreciated. Keep fighting the good fight and take care of yourself out there.
All right, Greg. Thanks for calling.